Good morning, everybody. It's an honor to be here at the first ever podcast. We're going to call this Zach Cooley is at it again. I am Zach Cooley, your host, and what we're trying to do is to delve into my Strictly Observing column, give you some inside background, some additional content, and we have on the phone with us a very special guest, a legendary guest, the only surviving member of the cast of the greatest show in television history, I Love Lucy. He played Little Ricky, and he's also a legendary musician as well with the long-standing Christian rock group David and the Giants. We're thrilled to have my personal friend, Keith Thibodeaux, on the line. Keith, thank you so much for being here. We're honored to have you.
Zach, it's my pleasure. I'm here in Phoenix, Arizona, visiting our daughter and grandson and son-in-law, and we're happy to be on. I'm happy to be on, I should say.
Well, I'm very, very honored to have you. I had the honor of meeting you in person 2 years ago at Mayberry Days. That was one of the greatest honors of my career and my life as well, to meet a legend like yourself and to find out that you were such a great guy and a fellow believer. That was a real blessing and a real gift to me. So thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate it. Mayberry Days is a great thing, and it's a fun event, and we've loved it each time we've gone.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. You know, I live about an hour away from Mount Airy, North Carolina, in southwestern Virginia town called Withville. We have about 8,000 people, not too much more than Mount Airy. So I guess what I wanted to ask you in that vein, because you were on the Andy Griffith Show, you played Johnny Paul Jason, Opie's best friend. Yes,
on the Andy Griffith Show.
And did you get a feel when you were on the show, or either when you were on the show or at Mayberry Days, what kind of a small town? What does that small town atmosphere feel like to you?
You mean in Mount Airy?
In Mount Airy, or on the show, if you felt that on the show. I don't know if you did or not. Because I noticed you said in your book that the scripts were shorter because people like us talk slower. So they were shorter than the Lucy scripts were. So when you go to Mount Airy and you get that small town atmosphere, what does that feel like to a big city guy like you?
Well, it's a great throwback to actual Mayberry town feel. Mm-hmm. Mount Airy is. I mean, being the birthplace of Andy, of course, that makes it special, and then so many people there have embraced the Mayberry city, the way it was, and they want to go back to those days. And so Kathy and I, my wife, whenever we've gone there, we've gotten the feel that they've tried to capture that nostalgic atmosphere and quality about Mayberry that the TV show had, but they wanted that city to have that same down home feel.
Sure. And I think, I was going to tell you that your character, Johnny Paul Jason, although they didn't have you do it in any of the scripts, Johnny Paul Jason was supposed to be, you put a horsehair in stagnant water and it turns into something, or those kinds of things, those sayings that are things that our area is famous for, and the way they talked on that show and the way they conducted life, that's how it's still done here in places like here today.
That's so cool.
So
Johnny Paulisms.
Right. And there are, my great aunt growing up was full of those superstitious sayings. Wouldn't file her fingernails on a Friday because it was bad luck. Where those kinds of things. So anyway, you traveled the world. Even before I Love Lucy, you were famous as the world's tiniest drummer. You toured with a man named Horace Height. Is that right?
That's right. I started out playing drums, Zach, on trash cans in the backyard of my home in Louisiana. I'm from Louisiana, so I'm a good Southern boy too. But but that's how I got my start. Began to play drums in Louisiana there, and played high schools, local high schools, Kiwanis Club meetings. Finally, Horace Height came to town and auditioned. I didn't audition. I played at a talent show that he had brought, and I won the talent show. And then 2 weeks later, he called my dad and said, "We'd love to have Keith and you come and join our tour and become part of the show." So our first show with Horace Height, oddly enough, was in Raleigh. Durham, North Carolina.
Durham, right? Yeah, Durham. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which was my first actual professional engagement when I was like 4 years old.
Would you recall playing in Roanoke, Virginia, or any areas around there?
I believe we went up the whole eastern seaboard, all the way up into New England, and then up into Canada.
Okay.
And then the show ended up, in California, where we went on hiatus at Horace Height's ranch in the San Fernando Valley in L.A.
Right. Wytheville, Virginia is actually the halfway point between Florida and the Great Lakes, so I'm sure you passed through my hometown many times on that tour.
Yes. We even went to Chicago, so I remember definitely Chicago.
Yeah.
I was missing my parents, or missing my mom. My dad was with me.
Right.
And I looked outside the window in Chicago, and I could see this little country boy from Louisiana. Saw these sailboats out on the lake, and I remember that image.
And speaking of your father, he was the one that was insistent on you being an actor and being in Hollywood, and he made sure that you were the child star, and got you the Lucy audition. Now, I have to ask you, because the column that we're backing up is a review that I have written on being the Ricardos, the film with Nicole Kidman and Javier Bardem as Lucy and Desi. And have you seen that movie? Will you see the movie? What did you think of it if you did?
Well, that's funny. My wife and I saw the first 5 minutes of it, and we turned it off. We were actually coming to see, we had to leave the next morning to fly out. So, and so we turned it off, and then we picked it up again. Actually, last night, I picked it up again to watch, and it was still late, and we couldn't watch it, the whole thing. So I've not been able to watch the whole thing. And but it's interesting that, of course, the hard thing with me is that I live that, I live that whole, the show, and as well as their home life away from the show. So it's very difficult for me to. I think their acting is really good. I think they don't capture the characters out, obviously, because they're not the characters.
Right.
They're not Desi and Lucy, Nicole and Javier.
Right.
Javier does not. Yeah, I don't think he as far as I've seen the show, I don't know about him capturing his Desi Arnatz's intensity, nor Nicole capturing Lucy's uniqueness. Very unique.
Right. I went into the film having no expectation whatsoever, so I guess I was slightly pleasantly surprised because I'm not a Nicole Kidman fan. But on the other hand, I know exactly what you're saying because you were there. You know about it, and of course, every film is going to take some poetic license. And you said you experienced some of their personal life, and that is actually quite an understatement because I listened to the podcast done by TCM host Ben Mankiewicz, which I think is great. And there was a clip of you either, I don't know if you were interviewed by him or it was taken from a prior interview, but there was an issue between Desi and another gentleman where there was a physical altercation. And as a result of that, and as a result of things that you had seen at their house by being very close friends with Desi Jr., you started to stutter. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that there was an energy and an intensity on the set that, in general, because of Lucy and Desi's relationship, because of the nature of the show being before a live audience as opposed to being, like Andy's show without an audience, it's just a one camera deal. There was so much of timeliness and be on your part and all that, and then to be growing up to be not just an actor on the show, but actually, would spend a lot of time with the Arnazes in their home before Lucy and Desi were divorced, and then afterwards. It was I kind of had to walk a tightrope between my friends Desi Jr. and Lucy Jr. and then the fact that I was an employee of the show, or after the show ended, my father still was an employee of Desi Lou Studios, so that was the pressure on that side too.
Right, and I believe it was in your book you said you could be playing with some friends from your neighborhood or from your class or some non-work related friends, and your father would say, Lucy called, you're going to go over and play with Desi and Lucy. So that was part of your job in a sense.
Yeah, it was. I felt I was compelled to go from outside sources, and then that kind of even carried off into later life when I'd be called to do Lucy things and whatever, and I just felt compelled, it's like I've got to do it, but it's like I was not an employee. I didn't, Desi and Lucy Jr., we were friends when we were younger, but then because of my mom and dad's divorce, that friendship was altered by the fact of geography, and it just felt like I was still kind of under the gun to do those kinds of things and all the time. And so actually, Ron Howard, he's doing a documentary.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that.
And I take some things like this podcast, and I take other things like Mayberry Days and some Lucy things. But it's not something that I have to do or not do. And in the case of Ron Howard's documentary, I actually turned that down, and Lucy called me and was trying to get me to do it, and she said, well, don't you want to do it with your old friend Ron? And I said, yeah, I like Ron and all that, but I said I just don't think you probably do that. And she goes, well, I get that. So,
well, and but you having said that, again, I'm very honored that you chose to speak to me, because you very easily could have turned me down, and it certainly, I doubt this will benefit your career in any way, so I'm grateful that you did this for me.
Hey, look, this is all about just having freedom to do what you want to do.
Right. Well, again, thank you for accepting. But you were very close with Desi Jr., but you said geographically that altered the friendship. Do you have any contact with him now?
I have, and throughout the years, I've stayed in contact with Desi. Desi was a great friend. I mean, I talk about it in my book where I didn't want to go over, but mainly it wasn't because of Desi so much as it was because of the different culture in Beverly Hills that was there. That whole thing, and then I do talk with Desi, and whenever we do talk, we'll end up talking 2 hours. And,
good.
We just got a lot to talk about, and so it's good to catch up every once in a while. I actually need to call him pretty soon. He was in that boy band, teen band, pop band, Dino, Desi, and Billy.
Right.
And Billy Pinchy recently passed away.
Oh, what?
Of that group. And Billy was really good. He's really a great guy. He was with the Beach Boys, and his sister married Carl in the Beach Boys.
Oh.
And he played many years as a backup musician with the Beach Boys on their tours and stuff.
Yeah, and I read.
So I need to
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I just need to talk with Desi and call him and catch up with him, and hopefully he's doing okay.
Right. We send our sympathies and prayers along as well. I read in your book where Dino Martin, when he passed away, you speak about that some in your book.
Yeah, Dino Martin he was something else. He was the guy that every guy wanted to be, because he was good looking and very athletic and all that, and he had the charisma, and but he was also a guy who I actually spent the night at his home one night because I sat in for Desi one night in Dino, Desi, Billy when Desi was injured in a surfboard accident, and so I got to spend the night and sat at the dinner table with Dean Martin, but Dino was like a guy who had a lot. His dad gave him, he had. When he was probably 14, 15 years old, he had like a Triumph motorcycle that he could ride around his property in Beverly Hills.
Being the son of Dean Martin.
Yeah, being the son of Dean Martin, he had all these privileges.
Right.
But he also had like a gun range in his near his room.
Oh my
so he
goodness.
could shoot live guns. And it was so bizarre, like this kid, just about anything. And he had a bit of an attitude around me when we were younger, Dino.
Right.
And just like more like a higher up than you or whatever. I wasn't kind of worthy to be a Beverly Hills person yet, coming from the Valley, but he was. In the later years when I went to Desi's funeral, we really talked, and it was just really great seeing him, and I was really sad to wrap it up about passing away.
Right.
The way he passed away and he was flying for the National Guard, I guess, a fighter jet, and crashed into a mountain. Very tragic. Very hard.
Well, I tell you, to shoot guns, near his room, you'd think there would be some laws or rules or regulations about that. That's insane.
Well, there was a lot more liberty back then, and some people like Dino who could afford it, and Dean being the son of Dean Martin,
right.
They could afford a lot of things that normal people